For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. We begin our news coverage at the UN, where representatives opted in favor of a new legal framework that will serve as a guide for countries restructuring their debts, as is the case with Argentina and the vulture funds. The new reform could empower poor countries against predatory funds and limit future defaults. It would also act as a deterrent to disruptive litigation that creditors could engage in during negotiations to restructure sovereign debts. Before the UN vote on the resolution, our correspondent in Argentina, Leonel Pobletti, spoke to some experts on the subject of vulture funds and the debate that took place today at the United Nations.
The central debate at the UN's General Assembly this Tuesday will be the need of a new regulatory framework to fill the legal vacuum which exists in international foreign debt issues and could mean the beginning of the end for vulture funds.
The debate at the United Nations seeks to create an international convention as a mechanism to ensure the restructuring of debt in countries that see the need to resort to debt restructuring. It might not be applied in the Argentine case because it happened a few years before this, but it will remain as a precedent, and this is important.
The project proposes that if a country restructures its debt and the plan is accepted by 66% of creditors, the other 33% must accept these conditions, as occurs in any restructuring procedure in the private sector.
We
expect the UN to step in to stop these kinds of speculative attacks, because obviously any process of sovereign debt restructuring would be subject to these maneuvers.
Argentina says that this proposal to the UN goes beyond its own conflict with the vulture funds.
This is a basic principle that we will not accept, especially as a country which has fulfilled its debt restructuring, which has kept to its international obligations, which has made a proposal which was massively accepted by its bondholders. We cannot validate huge payouts which puts the stability of our country at risk, and not just Argentina, but any sovereign country in the world.
This week promises to be an intense one for Argentina in its battle for more sovereignty over its foreign debt. This Wednesday, Argentina's National Congress is vastly expected to pass the Sovereign Debt Payment Bill, giving Argentina more sovereignty over its foreign debt issues. From Buenos Aires, Lionel Poblete Goduti, Telesur.
And thanks to Leonel. Moving on, Bolivia has sent out a high-level delegation on an international mission to regain its right to access to the sea.
Former Bolivian President Carlos Mesa, current spokesperson for Bolivia's ongoing legal case in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, centered around Bolivia's efforts to regain sovereign access to its former Pacific coast lost to neighboring Chile, embarked upon a media tour targeting several international institutions. His first stop was the United Nations, where he met with General Secretary Ban Ki-moon.
Our hope was, and we believe it has been well received, to explain to the General Secretary the reasons which Bolivia is pursuing this case, what it consists of, what are some of the legal elements that Bolivia is basing its arguments upon. And of course, we believe that our case is just and that we have a chance of winning.
Carlos Mesa's tour includes additional stops at the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., as well as the International Court of Justice in The Hague. He is part of a team of former Bolivian officials, including ex-Foreign Minister Armando Loaiza, who are coordinating the country's efforts to recuperate access to its former Pacific coast. Chilean officials also announced an upcoming diplomatic tour to present their arguments to the international community. Chile has filed an objection with The Hague, questioning the court's jurisdiction in the case. Bolivia has until November 14th to respond to the motion. Reporting from La Paz, this is David Doherty with Telesur.
And thanks to David, a new group of victims from Colombia's conflict will soon head to Havana, Cuba, as peace talks continue. Our correspondent in Colombia, Charles Parkinson, has more on what this group of victims could add to the debate.
During a press conference in Bogotá, representatives of the UN, National University in Bogotá and Catholic Church announced the names of the second group of victims to take part in Colombia's ongoing peace talks in Havana. 8 women are included in the group of 12, a proportion that is intended to reflect the heavy price that women have paid throughout more than 50 years of internal conflict.
Women have suffered disproportionately in this conflict. Women, there's been acts of sexual violence They've had their children recruited.
While most within Colombia's media concentrate on the role of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia in the internal conflict, Camilo Borrero of the National University in Bogotá says that the delegations of victims reflect the conflict's far more complex nature. Over the coming days, each member of the delegation will have the opportunity to speak face-to-face with representatives of those responsible for the crimes perpetrated against them. As was the case with the first group of victims, the testimonies of this second group are intended to yield general agreements between the two negotiating teams on how to deal with the vast array of crimes that have been perpetrated against more than 6 million victims in Colombia's internal conflict. Charles Parkinson, Telesur, in Bogotá, Colombia.
And thanks to Charles, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has widened the gap with her closest rival Marina Silva ahead of upcoming presidential elections. According to the latest poll released today, Rousseff would receive just over 38% of the vote in the first round of voting on October 5th. That's compared with 33.5% for Silva. A poll 2 weeks ago showed Rousseff's support at just over 34%. The polls also show that Silva's popularity has finally stalled after surging in recent weeks. Rousseff is now also statistically tied with Silva in a potential runoff election set for October 26th. Despite an agreed-upon truce between Israel and Hamas, allegations of human rights abuses by Israel continue. For more on the claims, we go to our correspondent, Noor Harazin.
A violation was reported today in the Gaza Strip after the Israeli Navy arrested 4 Palestinian men off the shores of Beit Lahia, northern Gaza. They were taken and their boats to an unknown area. At the same time, we just got the news that a Palestinian prisoner died in the Israeli jails after the Israeli prison services tortured him. At the same time, another Palestinian prisoner in the Israeli jails tried to suicide after hearing this news because he is scared of torturing him. And this is a very sensitive issue because since the war started on Gaza, the issue of Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli jails have been hidden. In fact, there is more than 6,000 Palestinian prisoners still held in the Israeli jails, including even children and women. And their issue is still one of the most important issues in the Palestinian cause, especially that many of them, dozens of them, are currently participating in a hunger strike campaign.
And thanks to Noor, Scottish nationalists continue to gain traction as a new poll has revealed a surge in support for breaking away from the United Kingdom. The numbers suggest that the upcoming referendum on September 18th could come down to the wire. In an effort to continue the status quo, leading politicians were quick to offer Scotland more powers in Parliament. Scottish politicians assured voters that even if independence is rejected, Scotland has already won more autonomy. UK Prime Minister David Cameron says he will cancel his weekly question session on Wednesday in order to campaign in Scotland for a no vote.
I really care about this issue. I care passionately about our United Kingdom, and I want to do everything I can to put the arguments in front of the people. In the end, it is for the Scottish people to decide, but I want them to know that the rest of the United Kingdom, and I speak as Prime Minister, want them to stay.
Carbon dioxide in the world's atmosphere hit record highs last year, according to a new report by the World Meteorological Organization released Tuesday. The United Nations warns that the situation has become dire and that time is running out to take action on climate change.
For CO2, but also for methane, for other greenhouse gases, the concentration keep on increasing. And that's year after year we break new records. But this year, an important additional news is that the rate of increase of CO2 concentration is even faster than previous year. Actually, it was the fastest rate over more than 30 years. So in other words, we are not in a period where the emissions start to plateau and to diminish. Rather, they tend to increase even faster.
Formula One racer Michael Schumacher was released from a Swiss hospital Tuesday, 9 months after a skiing accident left him seriously injured. The 45-year-old driver will continue his recovery at his home in Geneva, where he will receive rehab treatment for the grave brain damage he suffered. Those close to him say his health condition has not dramatically improved. As always, more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Wetta. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.